Anya was summoned by the O5 for a questioning regarding the last request she had submitted. She took a deep breath and stepped into the room. The room was dim. She could only see the silhouettes of the council sat in front of her. One of them ordered her to sit down. A brief moment of silence. Anya shifted in her seat anxiously, waiting for their questions to start. It was as if they were studying her. I heard from a member of the council that you, Dr. Anya Hood, had requested the termination of one Jessica Lambert, who was under containment. May I know why? Sir, the subject was under tremendous mental distress and physical alterations. It was only a humane thing to end her sufferings, but I was only an assistant to the experiments, so I couldn't make any decision. Yes, I've seen the recording. It's no different than any other subjects we performed our test on. What makes this one any different? You weren't there, but if only you could see it in her face. Her expression was full of agony and despair. Her eyes were looking at me as if she was begging me to put her to sleep. If only you could see it for yourself. A moment of silence, intermittently interrupted by sounds of flipping pages from the O5. I see the documents had undergo multiple iterations, and my time is too precious to go through each of them. Care to bring us up to speed? Starting from the beginning, Dr. Hood? Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Heater Class Object SCP-3127. SCP-3127, also known as 19-year-old Jessica Lambert and a female pig of abnormal size, forever, refers to a young woman by the name of Jessica Lambert, aged 19. At first, she was thought of possessing no anomalous physical characteristics. However, she is highly stressed due to her prolonged stay in confinement. Miss Lambert seemed to possess slight psychic abilities. Namely, anyone she touched took on her current emotional state for nearly 30 minutes against their will. SCP-3127 was not allowed to physically touch personnel or any living thing outside of testing. Miss Lambert was first discovered when she herself called the FBI, claiming that she had psychic powers. Foundation agents within the FBI took this seriously and confirmed her outlandish claims to be true. Her family and the FBI agents who heard of her call were amnestized, and the Foundation faked her death as a cover-up. Numerous tests with anomalous items were undertaken with Miss Lambert touching them. Oddly enough, every anomaly she touched had no reaction to her whatsoever. A year after Miss Lambert was confined, she reported to researchers that she was feeling sick for nearly 2 weeks. Despite numerous medical tests, nothing was found to be wrong with her until she suddenly went into labor. 2 days later, Miss Lambert gave birth to a piglet with anomalous characteristics. Unfortunately, Miss Lambert did not survive the birthing process and passed away. The piglet has since taken on the designation of SCP-3127. Just like its mother, no living creature should touch the piglet unless for testing purposes. 3127 was able to speak using Jessica Lambert's voice, yet claimed it doesn't know who that is. Funnily enough, 3127 claimed to be a British aristocrat from 1827 named Duchess Isabella III. After the Foundation looked into it, no individual bearing that name could be found, leading researchers to believe that 3127 is delusional. Those that touched 3127 immediately transformed into a copy of 3127 for approximately 1 hour before turning back to normal. All victims said they have no memory of the experience. 2 weeks after being born, a tumor was found growing inside of 3127's brain. The tumor grew at an accelerated rate, causing it to burst out of 3127's skull. The piglet was killed instantly. The tumor was then… Anya paused for a moment. The council noticed the fearful expression on her face, but they didn't care. Go on. The tumor was then allowed to grow, and within 24 hours, it had transformed into the humanoid form of Jessica Lambert. At this point, SCP-3127 had now taken on the form of the original Jessica Lambert, yet has no memory of her original life. Instead, now called herself Isabella Stanford, a pig farmer from 1827. It was then discovered during a routine medical examination that 3127's body is full of pigs of varying sizes, and she possessed no internal organs. Despite this, she behaved like a normal human. For a month, 3127 had not eaten or drank anything at all. Those who touched 3127 have their internal organs replaced with something almost like a pig. As expected, those in this state die nearly immediately, as they do not possess the secondary ability to survive such a transformation. With a better grasp on the anomalous nature of 3127, I expect 3127 to alter itself once again in the near future. How that will happen is unknown, but I've ordered everyone to make sure 3127 is as comfortable as possible to prevent it from occurring. Just as I predicted, 3127 started to feel sick just as the original 3127 did. Hours later, all of the pig-like organisms burst free from 3127's body. All the pigs then merged together into a larger anomalous pig-like creature and was subsequently given the title of SCP-3127. I call this cycle of death and rebirth a Machus event. This iteration of 3127 now took the form of a large, sapient female pig. Just as before, this pig is able to speak by using the voice of Jessica Lambert. However, this time around, all assigned staff have been made aware that a Machus event is possible. This iteration of 3127 oddly believes that it is the corpse of the original Jessica Lambert. It repeatedly asked to be buried so that it can be put to rest. All organs inside of 3127 have been replaced with tiny versions of the original Jessica Lambert. And just as before, 3127 does not need to eat or drink, but also does not need to sleep as well. Should for any reason 3127 scream, all those who hear the scream will believe that they too are Jessica Lambert and will ask to be buried. Unlike before, the anomalous effects of this iteration of 3127 are permanent. As soon as all of these facts were learned about 3127, I've alerted all staff members to prepare for the likely Machus event that would take place in the near future. Again, as predicted, the many Jessica Lamberts burst out of 3127, but only one of them survived. The surviving organ died of a heart attack a few minutes later. This organ then underwent a grotesque transformation over the course of 3 days, resulting in the creation of a hybrid between pig and Jessica Lambert. This iteration of 3127 trotted around the containment unit peacefully. This hybrid version of 3127 is sapient and possesses skills in sign language. The only reason it didn't speak was that it was constantly screaming at the top of its lungs. Those who heard its screams transformed into corpses of Jessica Lambert. Samples taken from these bodies showed that its DNA is that of a pig, not human. When it calmed down, I then conducted an interview with it, accompanied by a sign language practitioner. What have you learned? After interviewing 3127, she has expressed extreme discomfort at her predicament, claiming that ever since her original death, she has been in a never-ending nightmare, trapped in the back of her mind watching these events unfold before her, forced to die repeatedly in obscure and grotesque ways. She had also expressed no desire to harm anyone and constantly tried to stop screaming by covering her mouth. I see it had written a note of message to you. What? Did she? I wasn't informed of any other communications from her other than the interview. It was included right here, under Advisory 1.0. Would you like for me to read it out for you? Yes, if you'd be so kind. It reads, quote, "Please read this and really do what it says, okay? Not just say you'll consider it. Please help me. When I first came here, you said you'd help me, that it would be a few quick tests. I hate you, all of you. I hated your stares, quietly watching me suffer and writing on those clipboards, so full of disgusts and indifference at the same time. I'm not sure which I hated the most. No, I'm sorry, I know what's happening to me isn't your fault. Just please do something, anything. I don't want to die anymore. The worst part of all of this is I sometimes forget I'm not a pig. Help me." End quote. Why wasn't I informed of this? Perhaps it's because of your sentimentality towards the subject, Dr. Hood. Silence hung over the room. Then Anya spoke. Permission to terminate 3127? It has suffered enough. We will transfer it to Research Installation 33. With more technological and anomalous resources, 3127 could potentially be cured, and all future Machus events prevented. Is that clear? Yes, understood. Upon its arrival at the facility, the place transformed into a colossal domestic pig, becoming the latest iteration of 3127. It did not move, it did not sleep, eat, or drink. By all accounts, it was very docile, except for random bouts of prolonged screaming by using Jessica Lambert's voice. Those that heard the screams were transformed into creatures resembling a hybrid between a pig and Jessica Lambert. Thankfully, recording equipment does not pass on the anomalous effects of the screaming and can be analyzed by Foundation researchers. Dr. Anya learned that the screaming is actually done so in Morse code, and each time 3127 screamed, it only screamed out the same message over and over again. Where am I? Make it stop. Oink. Following the Marcus event, she immediately called for an emergency meeting with the council. As we speak, SCP-3127 is currently undergoing another Marcus event. I fear that if this continues, 3127 will continue to grow larger and larger, preventing us from containing it in the near future, due to the rate of growth after each Marcus event. I hate to be a broken record, but I believe that the only option left to the Foundation is to terminate 3127. I understand that the Foundation is not like the GOC. However, there comes a time when we must realize that all of our efforts do not always yield the best results. If 3127 continues to grow and we are unable to fully contain it, well, frankly, the world will end not with a bang, but with an oink. I don't need to tell you how absurd that is, but unfortunately, that is our reality if we continue down this path. By my estimations, we only have a year before it will be too large for containment. The council members discussed among each other in quiet murmurs. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Dr. Hood. In the meantime, I will send out a Foundation-wide email, alerting staff to this potential problem. We on the council are well aware that some threats are far too dangerous compared to most, and must be handled accordingly. I will reach out to you soon. Until then, keep up the good work. Ron Phillips took out his phone and started recording as his wife Stacy carefully led their children in blindfolds, Kara and Joshua, out of the car. "Come on, Mommy, tell us where we're going." "We're almost there, sweetheart. In fact, we're going inside right now." The family entered the store and removed the kids' blindfolds. They were greeted with the unpleasant sight of macabre stuffed toys on shelves, depicting scenes of violent battles. Some of the figures hanged from the ceiling on small nooses made from intestines. Whoa, a Build-a-Boar Workshop! Surprise! They wandered around the shop for a moment, then a sharply dressed staff member appeared behind the children. "Hey there, little ones! My name's Lucy. What's yours? Are you ready to build your new best friends?" She smiled brightly as the children responded excitedly. "See, Stacy? Told you they'd love it." "You were right, honey." Suddenly, another staff member popped up behind a shelf and joined the children. "Fantastic! I'm Ferris. Now, why don't we get started ASAP? Did you bring your own ritual daggers?" "The what now?" "Hello, everybody. I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Heater Class Object SCP-6566. SCP-6566, also known as Build-a-Boar Workshop, collectively designates a series of anomalous novelty toy stores resembling the popular, similarly named Build-a-Bear Workshop chain store. 6566 sports a similar logo to Build-a-Bear Workshop, but with subtle differences. For example, the bear head's black eyes are replaced with larger glowing red ones instead. The store's interior and exterior color scheme uses more shades of red, orange, brown, and black, with small inanimate decorations resembling SCP-6566-A instances displayed in grim fashion. Despite the conventionally unsettling decor, customers do not appear to be troubled by it. 6566 stores give off a perception-altering effect, making nearby humans less uncomfortable and more accepting of them. This phenomenon is more apparent in the perception and treatment of SCP-6566-A instances by affected individuals. They will identify and interact with the instances as though they were normal stuffed animals. SCP-6566-A refers to the seemingly sapient and malevolent toys that somewhat resemble stuffed animals. They are handcrafted creations by patrons of the Build-a-Boar Workshop. Customers can build figures of different animals, sometimes even amalgamations of various species. However, most of the handiwork come out resembling pigs and boars. Instead of fabric and cotton, shoppers are provided with rather unorthodox materials to craft their very own 6566-A instances, such as flesh, bones, and internal organs. Biological samples retrieved from 6566 stores reveal high amounts of human and wild boar genetic material. Further examination of the human DNA collected often results in DNA matches with missing persons from around the geographic area. 6566 is always staffed with the same versions of the same three entities, designated as SCP-6566-1 Lucy, SCP-6566-2 Ferris, and SCP-6566-3 King, respectively. Their names are self-proclaimed, and they will become extremely agitated if you call them anything else. The three entities also wear name tags that only ever displayed random and presently indecipherable symbols. No two instances of the entities wear name tags with the same symbols across all 6566 manifestations. In addition, all attempts at interviews, negotiations, or any significant dialogue about topics other than building or purchasing 6566-A instances with Lucy, Ferris, and King have been met with severe hostile non-compliance, be it Foundation agents or customers. The first known 6566 instance was discovered in St. Louis, Missouri in December 2016, following an investigation prompted by an unusual surge of violent acts and behavior from several children at one particular school. An agent embedded in the local law enforcement had flagged the incident as being potentially instigated by anomalous activity. It was reported that all the affected children were owners of 6566-A instances. They also provided similar descriptions of 6566 when asked about the origin of their dolls. At least 2 children were hospitalized due to contracting diseases caused by the unsanitary habit of carrying, cuddling, and playing with toys made of decaying flesh and entrails. Subsequently, more Build-a-Boar workshops were observed opening shop in nearby towns as well, and have been growing at a steady pace. However, its growth rate will accelerate dramatically if no one visits any of the existing stores. Currently, 6566's area of effect covers much of the Midwestern and South Central United States, as well as bordering regions of southern Canada. If left unchecked, 6566 could theoretically cover the entire planet before the end of the 21st century. The following are interview logs with the Phillips. I'm telling you, that place felt off, what with the decor and all. I knew something was up the moment I stepped through that door. Ever since my kids got those blasted toys, they've become more cranky and violent, getting into fights at school, throwing rocks at cars. You know, this morning I found a blood trail in the backyard. I followed it to the edge of the woods and saw Kira and Joshua carving up a dead cat. And of course, they were carrying those toys. They always do now, wherever they go. I mean, I know it's not that strange for kids their age to bring their stuffed animals everywhere or talk to them like imaginary friends, but it's the way they talk and play with them that scares me the most. Can you elaborate on that? Well, the kids whisper to them a lot of the time, like they're conspiring or plotting something. And the looks they give me when they turn around. Something's definitely going on here, especially with those damn toys. I understand, Mrs. Phillips. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. Is there anything you can think of that could be helpful to us? Yeah, my husband Ron filmed the whole trip. I have the footage with me, here. First things first, what are we gonna build today? 6566-1, Lucy, brought the children's attention to a shelf containing a series of small, empty, skin-like suits of varying sizes, colors, proportions, and apparel. All of them displayed board features, such as snouts, tusks, curled tails, and the like. Oh, I want the red one with the big face and tooth horns. I'm gonna make a Pegasus princess. Fantastic choices all around. Now why don't you follow Ferris here to the stuffing machine? Kara and Joshua followed 6566-2, Ferris, into a room at the back. Inside, the kids watched with excitement as Ferris revealed a large machine with a glass panel splattered with blood. Sharp turnstiles on a rotating bar can be seen continuously mixing various entrails and organs. And now, let the fun begin. Ferris collected the small skin suits picked by the children earlier. He affixed a small hole on the suits' torsos to a nozzle on the machine, filling them up with the meaty mash. Then, he took out a basket full of beating hearts for the kids to pick. Now then, Did anyone here bring their own ritual daggers? I'm sorry, what did you say? That's okay. We should have a couple laying around that the kiddos can borrow. Hey, King, can you grab a couple daggers? A door in the back opened. 6566-3, King walked out, holding an ornately crafted dagger in each hand. Screams of agony could be heard clearly from behind the door, though no one present remarked or reacted to it. Hi, I'm Manager King. Welcome to my little kingdom of fun. I'm glad to see you little rascals already hard at work building some boar buddies of your own. Great, now kids, repeat after me. The next 7 minutes and 6 seconds of the footage was heavily corrupted. The video shifted to a mix of red static and multicolored flashing. Heavily distorted and unintelligible dialogue could be heard, interrupted periodically with what sounded like human screeching. When the video returned to normal, all parties were shown to be unhurt, despite being covered in moderate amounts of blood. Dr. Popescu and Stacy were visibly shocked, yet no one in the video reacted to the bloody mess at all. Great job, kiddos! Now your little piggies are alive. Wow, isn't this exciting? I don't know, hun. Something seems wrong. Nonsense! What could be possibly wrong with making toys for children? Kara and Joshua began dressing up their new dolls. Kara opted for a princess dress, while Joshua went with a dark red wizard costume with a staff. Excited, they showed their parents their new best friends. Ron responded happily, whereas Stacy only nodded with a dazed expression. Now, remember kids, the best part about a best friend is that they are someone you can always trust. So make sure to listen to your boars. In unison, Kara and Joshua reply with, "Okay, Mr. King." So, how will we be paying today? Cash, card, or soul? Thank you for sharing this. We'll put it to good use. If it's all right, I'd like to speak with your children for now. Yes, of course. Please see if there's anything you can do to help them break out of this cursed spell they seem to be under. Can you share with me what you're telling your princess? Silence filled the room as Kara only stared unblinkingly at Dr. Popescu. So, your toy, Merlin, tells you lots of things from time to time, yes? Can you tell me some of it? Merlin says that right and wrong is just a big fat lie built to prop up the weak off the backs of the strong. I'm sure he did. But look, you know how like in cartoons, there's a little angel on one side of the hero telling them the right thing to do? Then there's a little devil that tells them to do something bad instead? Merlin is kinda acting like the little devil from those cartoons. So maybe you shouldn't listen to everything he says. He said you might say something like that. He also told me what to do if you did. Oh? And what did he— Whoa! Joshua suddenly pulled out a pair of scissors and rushed at Dr. Popescu. He was able to subdue Joshua without injuring him, while he himself received a few minor cuts. After forcefully procuring the toys from Kara and Joshua, as well as Ron's cell phone, all members of the Phillips household were amnestized. The recovered SCP-6566-A instances were promptly destroyed. Dr. Ritter waited patiently in quiet disgust as His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Maximilian the Great, greedily shoveled his meal down his cavernous gullet. The staff had taken to calling him King Max. Dr. Ritter secretly hoped that the reckless speed at which Max ate, coupled with the fact that he never bothered to chew his food, would eventually result in him choking to death. But so far, there had been no such luck. He supposed that if the creature's horrid table manners hadn't gotten him killed yet, then his anatomy was probably sufficiently non-human to render choking a moot concern. You done? Patience, dear boy. Patience. What's the rush? One should take their time to enjoy a feast. Chew slowly and thoroughly. Savor every bit of flavor it can offer. A life was slaughtered for this, you know. It'd be blasphemous to consume it without giving the proper respect it deserves. Dr. Ritter groaned as King Max took another bite off the meat, delicately this time. Say, it wouldn't be much of a feast if I'm the only one eating, would it? Care to join me, Dr. Ritter? Dr. Ritter shuddered as he looked at the mountain of hideously prepped food in front of King Max. But if it meant getting this over with, then No, thank you. Come on now, it's a feast. You're making me look really bad here. All you lot. Like a king who doesn't look out for his people, leaving them to starve. I am not like that. Surely you know that. King Max stood up and waved his food around with a grimace on his face. Juices and bits and pieces of meat splattered across the floor and table. Messily, half-chewed bits of food fell out of his mouth as well. It irked Dr. Ritter greatly. He then sat back down and tossed the half-eaten food carelessly onto the table. You're honestly ruining my mood here, Doctor. I think I shall retire to my chamber now. But you agreed to— I am enervated, Doctor. Fine, my apologies. Please let me join in the feast. Very well. King Max paused and looked straight into Dr. Ritter's eyes. Then, with a wry smile, it said, "Get on your knees and beg for it like a peasant." Dr. Ritter could barely manage to stop himself from cursing out loud and jeopardizing the interrogation. King Max looked him dead in the eyes for a moment. He let out a guffaw, extremely pleased at the sight of an insulted Dr. Ritter. Dr. Ritter could only remain seated across the table, grappling with his seething rage within as he watched the foul creature swallow another piece of meat. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you a tale from the SCP Foundation. Despite his scientific training and years of experience with the Foundation, Dr. Ritter couldn't bring himself to view his assigned subject objectively. When he sat across from the awfully bloated King Max, he saw only a monster from a fairy tale. Not a modern, Disneyfied fairy tale either, but an old European folktale where children were eaten alive, and not all villains got what they deserved. At roughly 3,600 pounds, Max was over 2.5 times the weight of the heaviest human on record. He was basically the size of an adult male hippopotamus. His diet required 54,000 calories per day to maintain, and the Foundation was more than willing to oblige. Max likely knew the locations of other SCP-3288 hives, which the Foundation desperately needed to prevent his kin from eventually overrunning the planet. Torture had proven ineffective, so they decided it would be best to try a more hospitable approach by providing their royal guests with any and all reasonable requests. They had dressed him in a modified caparison originally meant for a horse. It was not for His Imperial Majesty's dignity, but more for the comfort of the staff. They let him keep his crown since they couldn't safely remove it from the carbuncular outgrowths holding it in place without surgery. They even gave him a throne by putting his immobile body over a hole in the floor connected to his personal septic tank. This too was more out of necessity than courtesy, as both the volume and intensity of the king's imperial stool was beyond any ordinary plumbing. Food, however, was always King Max's most pertinent demand. Despite his pretensions of nobility, he was not a very picky eater. The bulk of his diet consists of rice, oats, and pasta, supplemented by stale cafeteria leftovers. With a robust immune system and stomach acid as strong as a crocodile's, there was very little the corpulent king could not stomach. And stomach he did. 70 pounds of it a day, enough to feed some people for a month. Though most of his fare was either cheap or rotten, His Majesty did have one particular addiction: no exceptions. The Foundation was forced to oblige if they wanted his cooperation. Just for this interview, a literal pound of flesh, retrieved from some D-class killed in action, and unused corpses the Foundation had lying around, was presented to the king as his reward for good behavior. It sickened Dr. Ritter, all of it. He tried to suppress these thoughts. He told himself to think of all the lives they could save if they could just get this fiend to disclose the location of the other hives. But it didn't work. This abomination had been gorging itself to superhuman obesity on innocent humans for over half a century before the Foundation found it. Now that it's in containment, they're still giving it human flesh? Weren't those D-class more human than whatever this thing was? Didn't they deserve better? Doesn't this bastard deserve worse? Dr. Ritter showed little sign of his inner turmoil, merely pushing up his glasses and clearing his throat before starting the interrogation. Does His Imperial Majesty find himself in the mood for some after-dinner conversation? I'd very much like to hear more about the Empress of the Black Forest. Ah, the Empress. Magnificent creature, most noble of all of us. I had the privilege of seeing her before I swallowed my eyes, you know. More than 10 feet tall she was, yet slender as a sapling. One eye pale blue, the other moonlit silver. Vanity's her greatest vice. Has a vast collection of wigs made from the scalps of her prey. Not that she's ever let her femininity keep her from carnality. She delights in the harming of others. Men, women, nobles, peasants. It's all the same to her. I made the mistake of scoffing when she said she could mutilate a man, and my poor belly hasn't been the same since. Max mused as he wiped his face with his now filthy caparison, then tossed his head back in rancorous laughter. If I hadn't been both impeded and impotent from my size, I would have paid her back in kind, rest assured. That's most fascinating, Your Majesty. I'd very much like to meet her for myself someday. I assume her manor is in the Black Forest Mountains? Do you happen to know where exactly? Max chuckled deeply at the question. The ruling class does need to keep in touch with one another, of course, but I'm afraid my living arrangements, though decent enough they are not yet quite decadent enough for me to betray my fellow royals. Dr. Ritter sighed, a feeling of dread welling up inside him. What more do you want? Live meat, for starters. Right now, I'm lucky if it's even fresh. I want something to play with, something that puts up a bit more of a fight. A healthy man once a fortnight. That won't empty your society, surely. I'll even settle for cripples, practically doing you a favor here. I'll see what I can do. That's what he was supposed to say to the king's demands, no matter how obscene. Dr. Ritter was to report the brute's every request to his superiors, and they would decide with their coldly utilitarian rationality whether or not feeding this swine live children would be worth it. And what if they said yes? I'll see you in the ground before I feed you live humans, you monster! Dr. Ritter shouted and slammed his fist on the button that activated the UV flood lamps that had been placed to subdue the king, should he ever become hostile. Max howled in agony and terror as the light instantly burned his unpigmented skin. Dr. Ritter grabbed the caparison and yanked it off, maximizing the king's exposure to the aberrant light. You tell me where the other hives are now, or I will burn you to a cinder, you fat bastard. As with all previous attempts at torture, the king just screamed and pleaded for mercy. Dr. Ritter, you are not authorized to use enhanced interrogation on the subject. Desist immediately, or you will be removed by force and subjected to disciplinary measures. Dr. Ritter jammed the door shut with his chair to buy himself more time. All these years, I've had enough of your ugly mug, your disgusting ways, and now I'm finally gonna see you choke. He picked up the sheet the creature had been wearing and tied it into a crude noose. Then he placed it around King Max's neck and pulled. Bracing his feet against the nearest fixture for leverage, he strangled the monster with all his might. Max gargled as he suffocated. He clawed at the noose with his stubby fingers, but couldn't get a grip. When the door slammed open, the guards tackled and subdued Dr. Ritter. He knew it hadn't been long enough for Max to suffocate. He despaired for a moment, fearing he had thrown his career away for nothing, until he heard the guard inspecting Max curse in frustration. Damn it, it's dead. A wave of relief washed over Dr. Ritter. Even as he was dragged from the cell in handcuffs, a victorious grin spread across his face. Dr. Ritter, you have been brought before this disciplinary committee for the unauthorized termination of SCP-3288-Alpha. Due to SCP-3288-Alpha's authority and status among SCP-3288, it's likely your actions have cost the Foundation a rare and possibly unique source of strategic intelligence regarding a potential SK-level threat to human society. Do you understand these charges? I know exactly what I've done. Dr. Ritter stood proud and tall, without a hint of remorse in his voice as he spoke. Whatever their practical reasons for indulging that beast had been, no more innocent lives would be sacrificed to it any longer. Max, the evil fairy tale villain, was no more, and that made him the hero. I've slayed the Goblin King.